Hello everyone, and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. So this is the shocking reason Remy opted to save Luna, while convincing everyone that she had died. It began 3 years ago, on a night so routine that no one in the family remembered it the following morning. Remy was 22, home from university for the weekend, lying on the living room carpet with a textbook open on his chest and the television flickering through a late-night replay. Luna, barely 15, came in wearing a huge hoodie once owned by their father, the sleeves engulfing her hands. She collapsed next to him without saying anything, cuddled up against his side like a cat seeking warmth, and stole half of the blanket he wasn't using. "You're heavy," he lied. "You're warm," she said, her voice muffled against his ribs. They stayed there for an hour, maybe two, talking nothing significant. She once inquired if stars ever get lonely. He informed her they had whole galaxies for company, which seems to satisfy her. When she finally fell asleep with her head on his arm, he remained still. He simply observed the rise and fall of her breathing and felt, for the first time in his life, the dreadful weight of being needed by someone smaller than himself. That was the moment. Not a great discovery, nor a lightning bolt. Just a normal, average night that had buried itself beneath his sternum and refused to go. Everyone else regarded Luna as the troublesome one. Their mother labeled her willful, their father called her a handful, teachers called her bright but unfocused, and friends described her as emotional, dramatic, and tiresome. Remy never argued about any of it. He merely noticed how she glanced at individuals when she believed no one was watching. She gathered strays in the same manner that other teenagers gathered followers on social media. Injured birds, runaway foster children, and elderly men grumbling to themselves on park seats. She fed, listened, and recalled their names. When she was 12, she spent her birthday money on a bus ticket to sit with a girl she barely knew in a hospital 3 towns away after the girl's mother overdosed. She arrived home at 2 a.m., crawled into Remy's bed without asking, smelling of antiseptic and someone else's misery, and cried so hard that she shook them both. He never told anyone about that night either. By the time Luna was 18, the house had become a battleground. Their parents had separated, reconciled, and then separated again. Money was tight. Their mother began to drink in the nights, taking precise, exquisite sips that left her sharp-tongued and cruel. Their father traveled for work and sent postcards that read like apologies he was too proud to admit. Luna battled alongside everyone. She skipped school, disappeared for days, and returned home with bruises she wouldn't explain. She began running with a crowd that Remy found unsettling, older men with motorcycles and records, girls with hollow eyes and track marks disguised behind bracelets. He tried to chat to her. She laughed in his face. "Remy, you don't get to fix me. Nobody gets to fix me." Then came the night that everything shifted. He discovered her in the bathroom at 3 a.m., fully dressed in the empty tub, staring at a bottle of their mother's oxycodone as if it were a math problem she hadn't decided to solve yet. Her lips were bluish. Not metaphorically. He wasn't sure if he was blue because of the cold or something worse. There was a note on the counter, folded into a perfect square like she used to do in middle school. Said his name on it. He did not read it. Not then. He flushed the pills, dragged her out of the tub, wrapped her in every towel in the linen closet, and pressed her against the tile floor until her teeth stopped chattering. She battled him at first, wild animal panic, then collapsed and sobbed like someone much younger than 18. He told her that she was not allowed to die. Not ever. Not while he was still breathing. She muttered, "I'm so tired." And he felt them like a sword between his ribs. Following that, she improved for a while. Therapy, poorly attended. Antidepressants are sometimes taken. She moved into the basement apartment that their father had paid for but never visited. She took a job at a veterinary clinic, chopped her hair short, and stopped taking calls from her former friends. Remy watched from afar, frightened to hope. Then she met Elias. Elias was 32 years old and charming in the way that only predators with years of experience can be. He owned a nightclub downtown, wore fitted suits, and quoted poetry to impress others. He told Luna that she was a comet. He said the world was too small for her. He told her several things. Within 6 months she was living with him. Within 8 hours, she had stopped responding to Remy's texts completely. When he arrived at the club, Elias greeted him with 2 security guards and a smile that could cut glass. "She's fine," Elias replied. "She's exactly where she wants to be." Remy noticed her again, across the club floor. She was thinner. Her eyes were extremely brilliant, and her pupils were huge even under the strobe lights. She gazed at him as if she was trying to place his face, then turned aside when Elias wrapped his arm around her waist. He began digging. It took time, money he didn't have, favors he couldn't afford, but he learned something. Elias wasn't only a nightclub owner. He transferred products via the VIP areas. Girls who began as hostesses eventually worked private events in hotels that did not ask for identities. Some disappeared totally. There were whispers of a lake house up north. There were tales that girls went there and didn't return the same, if at all. Luna's name began to surface in police reports that Remy was not permitted to view. Overdose. Assault. Missing person found 3 days later. No charges filed. Each time Elias' lawyers made it disappear. Remy went to the cops nonetheless. They listened politely, took notes, and implicitly told him that a girl with Luna's history, runaway substance abuse, mental health record, was not a priority, especially since the boyfriend had friends at the prosecutor's office. He tried their parents. Their mother cried into her Chardonnay, claiming Luna had always been difficult. Their father sent money and another postcard. Remy did the only thing he could think of. He began planning. Not in the same sense that someone might save someone from a burning building. No. He intended to save her in slow motion, by convincing the ocean that she had already drowned. Took 18 months. First he developed the story. Luna had spiraled again. Using excessively. We're talking about ending things. He methodically planted evidence. Text messages from burner phones, anxious voicemails left for pals who no longer spoke to her, and a falsified journal entry about not wanting to be a burden. He made certain Elias saw some of it. I made sure the correct people heard Luna crying in the club bathrooms about wanting everything to end. Then he convinced Luna. That was the hardest part. He discovered her on a Tuesday night in February, alone in the flat above the club, after Elias had kicked her out for the 3rd time that week. She was lying on the kitchen floor, track marks still on her arms and blood crusted around her nose. She looked up when he entered and laughed, a broken sound. "Came to say I told you so? I came to get you out," he explained. She shakes her head. "There is no way out, Remy. You do not comprehend. He won't let me leave. Not alive." He crouched in front of her and took her chilly hands into his. "Then we won't ask for permission." He presented it as if it were a business proposal, because emotion no longer reached her. A new identity. A clinic in Portugal that did not ask questions and achieved a 92% success rate with opioid detox. He had borrowed money from people who would ultimately want it back, but not for many years. A death that appeared convincing enough to fool everyone who cared. She looked at him for a long time. "You'd go to prison for this," she finally said. "Not if they think you're dead." "What about Mom? Dad? They will grieve. Then they will move on. They're good at moving on." She burst into tears, the type that come from a deeper place. He held her till she stopped trembling. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They chose the bridge because it was lyrical in a way Luna secretly adored, the same bridge their father used to take them to as children to watch freight trains pass underneath. They chose a night with freezing rain so that fewer people would be outside. They chose a car Luna had stolen weeks before and never returned. One Elias had bought her as a guilt present after putting her in the hospital the previous time. Remy drove. Luna sat in the passenger seat, clutching a duffel bag containing everything she was bringing into her new life. 2 changes of clothes, a snapshot of them at 8 and 15, making faces at the camera, and the note she'd written 3 years ago that he'd never read. He stopped half a mile from the bridge. They hugged for a long time, more than they had ever done as youngsters. She smelled like hospital soap and the vanilla perfume she'd been wearing since she was 13. "I'm scared," she murmured into his shoulder. "Me too. Will you read the note now?" He shook his head. "When you're safe." She kissed his cheek quickly and fiercely before exiting and walking alone toward the bridge. He waited until her figure vanished into the rain before driving the car to the designated location, leaving the keys in the ignition, the door open, and her shoes on the railing as an afterthought. He scattered some of her belongings, a bracelet Elias had given her, an empty medication bottle from the night in the tub, and a suicide note in her handwriting that he had rehearsed forging for months. Then he walked away. The body proved to be the most difficult aspect. There was a girl in the morgue that week, Jane Doe in her mid-20s, drowned in the river after a 3-day bender with no family to claim her. She matched Luna's coloring and was around the same height. The medical examiner was overworked and underpaid. $1,000 in an envelope and a narrative about a bereaved brother seeking closure was enough. Dental records were altered. The file was marked as closed. Luna Moreau, age 21, died by suicide. Remy recognized the body. He cried convincingly, without trying too much. The funeral was small. Their mother wore sunglasses indoors and held a rosary she hadn't touched since childhood. Their father flew in for 6 hours, shook hands, and told everyone about Luna's skill and promise. Elias did not show up. Instead, he sent flowers, white lilies that made Remy want to burn the church down. They buried an empty coffin. Luna had already taken a fishing boat to Morocco, then a train across Spain, and finally a clinic in the hills outside Lisbon where no one spoke English and the windows viewed the sea. She wrote him once, 6 months later, on paper that smelled of salt and antiseptic. I'm learning to be a person again. Some days I nearly recall how that feels. The doctor here says guilt is a luxury that I cannot afford right now. Every day I think about you and it makes me hate myself a little less. Thank you for murdering me. It was the nicest thing anyone has ever done. He kept the letter in the same box as the 3-year-old message, which remained unopened. Naturally, Elias sought her out. For a while it seems that he would never stop. He demolished her old flat, enlisted the help of her few remaining acquaintances, and warned everybody who knew where Luna Moreau was hiding to flee. But grief has a way of convincing even predators that their prey has genuinely vanished, especially when the alternative is admitting they were outwitted by a college dropout and a ghost. Eventually the searches slowed. The club changed its name. Elias gained weight, lost hair, and began wearing tracksuits instead of suits. People claimed he wasn't the same after Luna. People said a lot of things. Remy completed his degree and took a job repairing historic buildings, which kept his hands occupied and his head quiet. He went to see their parents once a month, brought groceries, fixed leaking taps, and let their mother grieve about her deceased daughter while he brewed tea strong enough to stand a spoon in. Sometimes, late at night, he retrieved the unopened message from the bathtub. He held it up to the light, hoping that if he got the perfect angle, the words would show through the envelope. He never opened it. Some realities were better kept buried beside the girl the world thought had died. Years have passed. One spring morning, when the light through his apartment window resembled the light from that average night on the living room carpet, he received an email from an address he did not recognize. Subject line: I fulfilled my pledge. Inside, merely a snapshot of Luna standing on a cliff somewhere bright and breezy, her hair longer, her face tanned and clean. He hadn't seen her smile like this since she was 14. She clutched a little bundle covered in a blue blanket. A baby, the caption said. His name is Remy. He has your eyes. Remy sat at the kitchen table, crying harder than he had at any other funeral, real or not. That was a surprise reason. Not revenge. Not guilty. Not even love in the nice, tidy sense that people prefer to describe it. It was the recollection of a 15-year-old girl dozing on his arm asking if stars ever got lonely, and the overwhelming, unshakable confidence that no matter what else occurred, whatever she did, whatever she became, she deserved the chance to find out. So he gave her the only thing he could. A death that was not hers, and a life that no one would seek to take away. And every year on the anniversary of the night she vanished from the bridge, he drove out to the lake house Elias no longer owned, which was abandoned and falling into disrepair, and put a single white lily on the doorstep, just in case the stars were watching. Remy had never intended his life to get entangled in such a web of secret, but once he realized what Luna truly meant to the world, and to him, there was no going back. The night he discovered her on the stone bridge, her breath short and her pulse fluttering like a caged bird, he realized that something far greater than either of them was at play. The city around them was alive with celebration, with lights reflecting colorful reflections on the river, but Remy was focused just on Luna. pale, shaking, and fading away. He had no idea then that the decision he would make in the next few minutes would shake the foundations of all he believed in. He just knew she needed him. When Luna said, "You have to make them think I'm gone. It's the only way," he understood the threat she faced was closer and more brutal than he had thought. The world knew Luna as a symbol. Some called her a miracle, some a weapon, and many just a mystery. But Remy recognized her as the girl who had laughed with him in the orchard, swapped stories under the falling stars, and trusted him even when doing so may lead to her death. And now, in the interval between two heartbeats, she was asking him to do the unthinkable. Let her go. He took her through the darkness, avoiding the festival crowds and slipping down alleys where the dying aroma of incense hung heavy. He could feel her blood on his palms, warm and slippery, and every step he went tightened the dread knot in his stomach. He wasn't sure how long she had before the hunters returned. He didn't know how many others witnessed her fall. He simply knew that her life was on the verge of secrecy. When he arrived at the old mill on the fringes of the riverside, he pushed inside, closing the creaking wooden door behind them. Dust swirled in the air like pallid ghosts. He placed her down on the old table and pressed his fingers against her wrists. Faint but present. She was still with him. Luna opened her eyes, blue and hazy, but determined enough to hold his arm. "You can't let them find me," she stated. "If they feel I am still alive, they will not stop. They'll take me back." Remy swallowed. He had hundreds of questions, but he shoved them down. Luna took a deep breath and said, "Tell me what to do. You've got to make them believe I perished on the bridge. Make it public. Make it believable. The council has spies everywhere. If even one of them doubts it, this will fail." Her fingers tightened around his. "Remy, if they catch me again, it won't just be me who disappears. They'll use me and all you know will change." He wasn't sure what she meant at the time, but he'd seen enough to believe her. Luna had always piqued the council's curiosity, which was both ardent and covert. Rumors circulated that she was born with a power linked to the city's oldest legends, something that could alter the balance of power in unthinkable ways. But Remy was unconcerned with power. He cared about Luna. He cleansed and dressed her wounds as best he could with ripped bits of his shirt, and when she finally fell asleep, he went outside to contemplate. The river was silent now, with the lanterns flickering and the crowds dispersing. Only the faint gleam of dawn crept across the horizon. He took in the cool morning air and made his decision. He'd save her, whatever it takes. He returned to the bridge where she had fallen. The traces of blood remained, shimmering darkly on the stone. He let his hands shake briefly before forcing himself to work. He removed Luna's cloak, torn, discolored, and undeniably hers, and let it float down into the water, where the current would bring it far downstream. Then he climbed onto the bridge's outside ledge, braced himself, and lowered a bundle of stones wrapped in linen. When they splashed into the water, the sound resonated with finality. Anyone who spotted the cloak downstream would assume she had collapsed and been carried away by the river. But he did not stop there. He needed witnesses. He stumbled into the nearest public plaza and shouted her name, letting dread twist his voice until passers-by turned to look. Luna fell. He cried. She slipped and now she's in the water. People rushed toward him, asking inquiries, gripping his shoulders and staring over the bridge. By the time the council guards arrived, the news had spread like wildfire. Remy responded to their interrogation with shaky hands and a hollow expression he didn't have to fake. He had nearly lost her. And in the eyes of the world, he did. When the guards finally let him go, claiming it was a tragic accident, Remy walked away with the crushing weight of his actions. The untruth enveloped him like a second skin. A part of him was afraid they wouldn't believe it. Another half feared they would. And Luna would vanish from everything she knew. However, there was no turning back. By the time he returned to the mill, Luna was awake, sitting up weakly, her hair knotted about her face. She gazed at him with a mixture of appreciation and remorse, almost breaking him. "They believe it," he replied quietly. Her shoulders sagged. Relief, sorrow, fear, all intertwined together. "Good," she whispered. "Then they won't look for me." Remy could see the truth behind her words. They would not cease because they felt she was dead, but because the council no longer considered her valuable. They would shift their focus, strategize their next move, and manipulate the narrative to achieve their goals. For the first time since her captivity, Luna was free. Days have passed. Then weeks. Luna's power gradually restored, but her spirit seemed to be burdened by something she didn't reveal. Remy did not push her. He merely remained by her side, giving her food, tending to her wounds, and watching the world go on without her.